I was sitting at the brake repair place thinking about where else I'd rather be and how little time I was actually going to have to myself, or how little time I've had for the last 48 hours, in the sense that I'm waking up, having to go to the gym, then go to the grocery store, then eat, then wait, and then call around to get an estimate on how much brakes and rotors were going to cost because no one seemed to want to just replace brakes. Everyone wanted rotors to guarantee the work, as everyone kept saying. And I thought to myself, that sounds expensive. But as I sat there and I answered comments from as far back as last week, because I get hundreds of comments and I love answering the comments, I love looking at the comments, I love interacting with the community because you guys are the ones that are telling me that you're out there in the real world struggling to make ends meet while you have jerks in the comments say things like this to me. I'm not going to let you steal people's hope. I got that comment today, and that's why I'm making this video, because this guy insists that as long as you have a positive mindset, that you're going to be successful, and that my channel is so negative that he's not going to listen to my videos again. And I'm like, good, get out of here. I don't want your kind here. I don't want people here on my channel who think that you can just start your own business, or that that great job is just around the corner, or that you're not going to live in poverty for the rest of your life. Get this through your thick skulls, idiots. I've worked my whole life at minimum wage. You think I wanted to spend my life looking like this? I mean, my neighbors are moving out right now because of the roach problem, and I can't afford to leave. And so you're stuck in perpetual poverty. You're eating the lowest food. You're participating in life at the lowest level. I've only got 3 days left of my vacation, or 4 days left of my vacation left, and I haven't done a single thing. I've sat here in the dark because, like every other poor person, our vacation time isn't for vacation. It's reflecting on how screwed we are by sitting at home, not being able to go anywhere. I mean, uh, when you think about a cost for someone to have to spend $500 for brake pads and rotary replacement, which, according to what I'm looking at here on ChatGPT, and you guys have probably long since not seen it anymore, the average cost is $250 to $800 per axle. And I had to do the front brakes today because they were squeaking like a mother, and I was getting tired of listening to the screeching noise. But I've heard people just keep going on. Once it hits that indicator bar, it means you need to get new brakes. And so, actually, recently I had someone who ruined their entire brakes because they thought they could just go one more month without replacing their brakes, and it ended up costing them a small fortune. They paid closer to 800. And I was like, I told you when the last time I was in your car that you needed to get this fixed and you wouldn't pay attention. It's not that we can't pay attention to our problems, like everything else in our lives. We can't afford it. And it's unfortunate because a lot of us are going to drive our Promobiles right into the ground. And it's not by choice. It's simply the fact that we don't have an extra $500 laying around. You just have to sometimes you like when I walked in there, I went on Groupon and they had this like Black Friday sale. And every person that walked in after me asked about that Groupon sale. And the salespeople kept saying, it's like, oh, no, 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 that doesn't include all of this other stuff. You can get, we're going to charge you this much for this. And then I was told I was going to get a $50 discount. And then they tell me that I didn't qualify for it. I was like, okay. Everything about being in the brake shop felt like bait and switch, just like our lives. You go to university, you become educated, you believe in the system. But there are these people that will defend that system until they go into the grave. And it's usually older people or people who truly haven't had to live at the bottom like most of us have. If you're working in retail right now, if you're doing some horrible job, working the customer service desk, stocking shelves, building furniture, wherever you're working in retail, and you think it's temporary, let me tell you this. Before I went back to school, I was working at Kroger's. When I got out of school, I was working at Walmart. No big improvement after 10 years of being in school. In fact, there's been no improvement in my life since I was a teenager. From where I was when I was 16, I have not improved in my life at all. Home ownership, not a chance. Waiting until now to have my first car because I could never afford a car before this time in my life. Waiting my entire life just to buy a used car because there's no way you're going to buy a used car on the minimum wage. It's just not going to happen. And so there's a lot of things in your life that aren't going to happen. Your relationship status is going to be single. And this is something that was discussed in the comments from my last video is that somehow Gen Z thinks that they're going to reach this amazing success, have a relationship at some point in their life while gaining a stranglehold on life and finances, right? While they're living in their parents' basement playing Call of Duty all day. See the disconnect? You can you can say that you want to be something, but if you're sitting at home because you can't afford to work, and that's really what it comes down to for a lot of people, they just can't afford to work. The pay, the cost of working between transportation, having to buy food, and every other expense associated with having to work, it's just not worth it. So if that's the system that's out there, how do you defend a system that is actively working against the entire proletariat to make certain that they never get ahead? Because the last thing corporate America wants is happy people. Miserable, depressed, anxious people keep coming back to work. People who don't have that, they don't they're not going to participate in a system that doesn't like them. That's the whole Gen Z mentality. That's their whole the backbone of their belief system. It's like we want to make $500,000 a year. And someone asked me where that number came from. It's just the I wish I could put up the article, but unfortunately you can't see it unless you pay. So that when they surveyed Gen Zero, this is the number that they decided that they needed to make per year in order to be to feel like they were comfortable. And I'm like, the average person probably makes between 15,000 and $25,000 a year, and they're talking about 500. That's ridiculous. But what's even more ridiculous is people that come out here and defend the system because they're that one person. Because if you look at data points for from the proletariat, the average wages aren't $70,000 a year. There's no way that average wages are $70,000 a year. Hell, I've been looking for work on Indeed and I haven't even seen a job that I would be remotely qualified that paid $70,000 a year. The jobs that I could possibly get on Indeed pay $14 to $20 an hour. And these corporations want you to be grateful for that job, which I just don't understand what's wrong with them because anyone else will tell you that's not living wages. Living wages start at $150,000 a year. No one's making that. So, in starting in my monologue today, I took again this little tidbit from the story I generated. This isn't just about a bad job or a rough patch. It's about something much bigger. It's about a culture, no, a religion that worships work even when it's destroying us. That's what work has been doing for many decades, is destroying the lower class. Because I was reading an article yesterday that said being a mail carrier, right, lady or man, it meant that you were middle class. There's a lot of jobs that have dropped from middle class into poverty, and more people are trying to cling to being middle class. But middle class is starting to be $150,000 a year. Now, imagine that. That's middle class. Now, look at your current job. You're making $16 an hour. That doesn't even put you anywhere near that. That means you are the working poor. And if you look at the statistics of you being able to move out of that bracket into something better, it doesn't look good. You don't have the skills, the markets are oversaturated, and plain and simple, we're in a recession. Corporations aren't hiring. That's really what it comes down to. Is the hiring has slowed and the firing has slowed in some sectors because they are trying to make it seem like everything's okay. Everything in our society is about smoke and mirrors. And I'm going to start with that one data point that you can always look at to let you know that society's a sham. That's the unemployment rate. There's no way that the unemployment rate is 4% unless you're counting a person that works 1 hour a month and you're considering them to be employed. These numbers don't tell the real story. We all know what it feels like to be out here and not doing well. The proletariat is not okay. And with that said, let's transition into today's 3 talking points. So, again, this is generated from a paragraph that I wrote about my feelings on work while I was sitting at the brake shop. So, here we go. Many people defend the system because they've been conditioned to believe that hard work alone guarantees success. This myth creates a false sense of hope and keeps workers chasing an illusion even as they remain stuck in low-paying jobs. So the point of what I wrote is I don't understand people who worship slavery. This is what most low-level positions in our society. It's a system that exploits the truly desperate people. And more people are falling into the column of desperation. I wouldn't be at my current job if I wasn't desperate. My coworkers wouldn't be there. Even the people at your job. It takes a certain amount of desperation to take a desperation level job. And as desperation moves up along the hourly paid amount, as I've said before, the hourly pay is the work of the devil because it's never going to be enough. And again, intentionally, because if your comfort level in life is completely based on your financial situation, that doesn't look good for most of us because our financial situation, there is no one coming to save the proletariat. The proletariat is in a situation, in a mode right now where it has to self rescue. Listen to me, proletariat. We are not going to be saved by the Cheeto in the White House. The proletariat has to self rescue. And the only way to self rescue the proletariat is change from the bottom because it's not going to come from the top. The top has no interest in taking off your chains. In fact, the top would much rather put heavier chains on your ankles and wrists and around your neck. You think that L around your neck right now for loser isn't heavy enough? Imagine doubling the weight of it. That's what the proletariat is facing. The trickle down economics is a completely failed. It's an expression at this point. There's no such thing as help coming from above. Because in order for help to come from above, there would be a rescue program for the American public. There is not. In fact, there is more profit in making certain that you can squeeze even more labor out of them, more productivity, more motivation in the workplace. If your only motivator in the workplace is not to lose your job while you figure out how you're going to eat dirt in order to get by, the proletariat is completely demoralized. There's no rescue coming. And a lot of people still, they will defend this system that has betrayed them from the very beginning. The moment you don't have the privilege of being wealthy when you come out of your mom's hoo-hoo screaming and yelling, I mean, the reason babies cry is because they know they're going to suffer for the rest of their lives. At least that's my opinion on it. So, moving on to talking point number 2. Society often blames individuals for their struggles, calling them lazy or unmotivated, while ignoring the system's Systemic barriers that keep people in poverty. This shifts the responsibility away from corporations and government, allowing the cycle of wage slavery to continue unchecked. It's great when it's unchecked because what you're assuming is that someone's keeping tabs on the corporations, right? Someone up there in the government should notice how miserable the lives are of the proletariat. But guess what? They know they don't care. It's not them eating government cheese. It's not them figuring out how they're going to stretch that paycheck just a little longer. They don't care because the people up there are completely disconnected and on purpose. You force the entire political system onto the minimum wage, and we would see change immediately as they try to figure out how they're going to pay mortgages on multiple homes with the minimum wage. You don't. When you're this close to the bottom, all you do is scratch and hope for for a non truly miserable day. Because as I've said, every day is the worst day of my life, meaning that tomorrow will be even worse than today, and the day after that will be worse. This is how we live. And the isolation that we live in, because most of us we can't do anything. I mean, today, did I have a conversation? No, I did not. I mean, I talked to the school teacher, but she's kind of, she's old and has adult kids. It's not really a conversation per se. Like if I were to give you guys talking points from the conversation we had, there really aren't any that we haven't hashed over. In fact, today was a classic conversation between two NPCs that say the rent's too high and wages are too low. That was our conversation. And we have the same conversation repeatedly. Today I went over to the customer service desk because I needed to get some more smokes. And the same conversation that I've had with her, the same jokes, the same everything. I looked at her poor, oh my God. I looked at her shoes today. And I mean, they were like Payless specials. I looked at her and I'm like, how are you wearing those shoes when you have to be on your feet all day? Do you know what her answer was? A typical poor person answer for why you don't have better shoes. Number one, she can't afford them. And number two, her way of dealing with having poor shoes was to wear a second pair of socks. I kid you not. That was her answer. All right, moving on to talking point number three. Many workers feel compelled to express gratitude for jobs that barely meet their needs because of fear. Fear of unemployment, fear of being homeless, and a fear of being labeled as ungrateful. My job does this all the time. They're like, you should just be grateful you have a job. I hear it on a daily basis. And if it was just this job, I'd say, wow, that's such a fluke. But no, I've heard it since I started working, since I was a teenager. I've heard that you should be grateful to have a job because we could have given it to that guy over there, that hobo with his pants around his ankle that's singing some show tunes. That guy could have your job. And that's the way they guilt you into worshiping your own slavery is they've got to guilt you into it. It's like, well, if you're not going to come to work and give us 110%, if you're not going to do five people's jobs, we'll just find someone else who can. And that's one of the saving graces for my current job is that they know that bringing another person into this position, they're not going to stay. There's a certain amount of desperation that they know that a person that's working in this position needs to have. I've had five senior managers in the 3 years that I've worked there. Is there a reason why we've had that much change in management? And the reason is simple. It's a high turnover position. It's stressful. It doesn't pay nearly as much as it should. And management has been sadistic as hell since the corporation got new ownership. And so everything is terrible in society. And people just don't like hearing that. They're those people that believe so strongly in the system that even when the entire system laughs in their face, they still are going to say it's the greatest country in the world. And then you wonder, it's like, what's wrong with these people? I mean, you are not going to be able to tell me that the greatest country in the world where workers fear unemployment because they know that your employer is going to try every trick in the book to gyp you out of unemployment benefits, and that you're one paycheck away from losing your home. And then on top of that, your employer is going to list you as ungrateful for not wanting to come in and work for free because they're short staffed. It's the system. It's the way it works. It's a disgusting, despicable, gross system that should be stomped out, but it's all we have. And it's unfortunate that that's all we have. But I'm here to tell you, it sucks.